You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is July 16, 2025, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we're bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. And today we have a show. We're going to talk about a couple of different topics. We're going to talk about a doctor who was recently, I guess all the charges were dropped against him. He was a COVID doc who was trying to do the right thing, and of course that put him on the wrong side of the government. So we'll talk about whether or not that guy's a hero or not. And then we're also going to talk about some mayhem in LA between the minimum wage standards that they're trying to put on the hotels down there, and whether or not Los Angeles will be able to clear that hurdle for the Olympics. And then finally, we're going to talk about some local leaders gone wild down there in Los Angeles. So, but before we get into any of that, let me introduce you to our panel. In our lower left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our lower right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. My name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So before we get into any of the topics, we always like to start with a Liberty quote of the day. And a lot of times it's something that's a little bit related. And I think this is related to a lot of the madness of the left and big government. And this one is from Thomas Sowell. So he says, one of the ways of understanding the consequences of economic decisions is to look at them in terms of the incentives they create rather than simply the goals they pursue. And of course, it comes back to that thing. The road to hell is paved in good intentions, and I tell you, government has been busy paving that road for us. So, well, what do you guys think of this quote? I think it's a pretty great quote, and
well, anything from Thomas Sowell is okay in my book. Guy was so brilliant, but This is looking at understanding the consequences, whether they be unintentional or unintended, or intended consequences is the only way to look at it. Who wins and loses, and so on and so forth. And a lot of times you don't know until it happens, and you see what the fallout is of economic decisions that government makes. Economic decisions that the market makes are based on millions and millions of individual decisions, not just a few decisions on top. So they are market decisions are more, how should I say, natural, for lack of a better word.
Certainly bottom up, and that's one of the problems with the other decisions from the government, that they're generally top down.
Yeah. Top down with no vested interest.
Bottom up and far more efficient. Go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, just saying, without any, any skin in the game. They don't have any skin in the game. They just make the decisions for everybody else. Yeah.
I think Jason, you said it. You said it quite well when you said that the road to hell is paved with lots of bricks of good intentions. You didn't use the word brick, but I'm using it. And this is so true, because a lot of these so-called social justice programs that the government comes up with, is always some good intention, some good goal that they want to achieve, but it also created a lot of perverse incentives. They are really picking winners and losers in the marketplace. So when they raise the minimum wage, you think, oh, we are doing so good for the poor, we're doing so good for the working poor. But what you're really doing is you're creating these perverse incentives, which are really and truly will destroy businesses. And this is why, and we'll talk about this later in the show, we see this destructive nature of the minimum wage law. But there are many of them throughout the country, and they're doing nothing but destroying lives and destroying businesses. So anyway, we'll talk about this a little more. I think Thomas Sowell is absolutely correct in looking at the perverse incentives that these laws create.
Yeah. One thing I did want to add on to when I mentioned bottom up, it's funny for us who are used to looking at these things kind of in the realm of economics. We're that seems normal to us to think bottom up is market oriented, but to a lot of people who really aren't that, who haven't thought too much about economics or the market, they think it's some rich guy running a business giving us top down stuff, but they don't quite understand that interaction that, without the force of government, the only way he moves his products is if you decide to buy them.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so this is the signals that are sent, from all over the market, whether it's people near the top or people at the bottom. There's signals constantly being sent. And I think that's the point that guys like Thomas Sowell are always trying to get across, is that, you can't just cut those signals off and think that a few smart guys at the top are going to know everything in a government. So, yeah.
It gets back to the point that Tim just raised about decisions in the marketplace. And of course, I always tell this story. Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, they don't give one crap about me, but yet because of their products, my life, in terms, at least my professional life, was a lot easier, much more efficient, much more productive. And this is what a marketplace can do when millions of people are making decisions in their own best interests. Well, in case of Jobs and Gates, being innovative and creating products which they hope to sell in the marketplace. And of course, people are, whether it's my employer or my personal use, I purchase those products. Makes my life more efficient and more productive. But this is what a marketplace does. But when you have the government on top choosing winners and losers, you always end up with some destructive phenomena out there where a lot of lives are lost or at least destroyed, and a lot of businesses you just run away from the jurisdiction, which are imposing these winners and losers dynamic upon them. So the important thing to see here is that when the government is making decisions for the marketplace, they are distorting the very thing that is supposed to be the most productive thing that we have, the human being, that human civilization have ever known. It's an efficient functioning marketplace.
Well, speaking of giant distortions from the government, that really segues well into our first story, which has to do with somebody accused of a crime back in the COVID era, which I so wonderful now that we can refer to that as the COVID era, as it's in the rear view window. But that was a time when we certainly saw a lot of government planners making decisions for everybody. And that really is the crux of what is at the first story. And that is that the Department of Justice just dropped charges against a Utah doctor. His name is Dr. Moore. And essentially he was, we saw a lot of doctors working for the government who were working off of phony information or bad information and then making decisions to push it on all of us like they knew what was going on. But we also, this is a case of a doctor who was saying, hey, I think all that information is phony. And if my patients don't want to do that, I'm going to find a way around it for them. And that's kind of what happened in this story. So let me take you to a video that'll give you a little bit of background and let you hear a little bit from the doctor in his own words as well.
The U.S. Justice Department has dropped charges against the Utah plastic surgeon accused of providing fake vaccines and vaccine cards in 2023.
The instruction to drop the charges came from United States Attorney General Pam Bondi. You are seeing images here of a protest in Utah supporting Dr. Michael Kirk Moore. Even though charges were dropped, the U.S. Attorney's Office for Utah alleged that Dr. Moore destroyed over $28,000 worth of government-provided COVID-19 vaccines and then distributed almost 2,000 fake vaccination cards in exchange for money or donations to specific charitable organizations. The United States Attorney General posted on X this morning about the case, saying, quote, at my direction, the Justice Department has dismissed charges against Dr. Kirk Moore. Bondi posted on X, continuing that Dr. Moore gave his patients a choice when the federal government refused to do so.
So Dr. Moore was in trouble for essentially trying to help his patients evade the heavy hand of the government under COVID sanctions. Let's hear from Dr. Moore in his own words.
Do you regret any of what you did?
No.
Not at all. I did what was right. I did what my patients wanted.
Moore admits he provided real vaccination cards with real lot numbers, but never gave the shots.
They were real cards, and they had the real lot numbers on it. I just didn't give them the injection.
But he says he didn't violate the law, just the CDC rule.
They accused me of violating the law. There was no law. It was a CDC edict. It's a CDC. Essentially, a CDC is an advisory agency only. Okay, they don't have the ability to make law. I just did what my patients wanted. I talked to them about full informed consent. You can't have informed consent with people when you don't know what you're injecting in them.
Another interesting aspect about this case is that it was community involvement that helped to turn this in Dr. Moore's favor. Let's hear a little bit more about that.
Moore believes public support helped bring the case to an end, thanks to a Utah-based podcast, We Are the People, and the public rallies that followed.
Probably a little over 100 people show up at the courthouse before 8 a.m. on Monday morning. And what did it look like? We had doctors speak. We had several different people in the community speak about Dr. Moore, about the case. And really the whole purpose was to kind of get information out of the community so the community know what was going on in their backyard.
So there you have it. It's a story of a doctor whose people who came to him who said, hey, look, we don't trust what the government's giving us, but they're saying we can't do anything without this magic card that the government is giving us that says we are vaccinated with this. And a full disclaimer, I mean, I had the vaccination when I was, that was the only one I had, but I did take that first round. But, certainly I knew a lot of people who were kind of hesitant about it. So anyways, what do you guys think about this story? I think sounds kind of like maybe a libertarian hero, but he also did, I guess lie, but he lied to a government that was committing a bigger lie on us, I think. So what do you guys think about this?
Go ahead, Leon.
Well, I have some truly mixed feelings about this. Okay, I really do. On one hand, the government, I support the actions of the doctor. I really do. I think what he was doing was absolutely correct. But I think you could find in there some law breaking occurring. And I don't think we should really be free to break the laws we damn well please to start with. And he did destroy some of the COVID medication because he gave the people actual lot numbers, so which means he couldn't use it again, and it was definitely destroyed. He gave out the fraudulent cards, which I don't know if that's really a crime, but it could be. I think certainly the Justice Department was alleging some sort of fraud in their case. So while I support the doctor in his actions, and I think it was a good thing for him to do, because I think the heavy hand of government we saw so clearly during the whole COVID era, it still leaves you with the idea of whether people should be just free to break the laws or damn well please. We always get back to the rule of law versus the moral conscience. And this is the case that we have, have a very strong history here in the United States. I mean, slavery was legal. Who should be obeying those laws? Jim Crow was legal. Who should be obeying those laws? I mean, there are a lot of laws that are on the books. I'm sure we could probably find some laws on the books that are downright immoral, but they are laws. What do we do when we are faced with this dilemma in our face? Like I said, personally, I support the doctor, and I'm glad the Justice Department decided to drop the charges against him. But we still have the issue of the rule of law, which I think when we are citizens of a nation or citizens within a jurisdiction, we should do everything we can to abide by the law. And when we can't, we should organize and do whatever we have to do and protest and do what they have to do. Peaceful protests, I'm talking, actual peaceful protests, or whatever we have to do to change the law, just like Martin Luther King did. He broke the law in many cases, I'm sure he did, but his moral conscience was greater than the rule of law in that case. So we are still left with this dilemma. I am still left with that dilemma. I support the doctor, but he broke the law, as far as I can tell. And I'm not sure where I would land perfectly on this issue.
Okay. Yeah, there's some dudes in Nuremberg trials that obeyed the law, and if you, Leon, were a resident of Pennsylvania in 1830, and a fugitive slave ran across ran into your woodshed and was hiding out, and you saw him run in there and knew he was a fugitive slave, you would be compelled by the fugitive slave law to turn him over. So, a lot of people did not obey those laws. So our country has a long and beautiful history of disobeying laws. The prohibition laws were disobeyed right and left because we disobey unjust, unconstitutional. Although the prohibition laws prohibiting alcohol were constitutional. They even went way beyond what they do nowadays to make it constitutional. And yet people still realized, the absurdity and stupidity. This from somebody that doesn't drink alcohol, but this was ludicrous. So, he did break the law. I don't know. Did he break the law? He said.
It's alleged that he did. It is alleged that he did, and it does appear so. It's alleged that he did.
Yeah. He says the CDC has these guidelines. Okay, you're supposed to inject people with this vaccine. Okay, that's the CDC guidelines. It's not a law. It's not compelled to inject them. But what he did, especially as a plastic surgeon, which I don't think he's normally injecting people with any vaccines whatsoever, is his patients came to him and said, "Hey, doc, can you help us out here? We want to get under the radar here." So there's probably some law in there. I mean, we have so many laws on the books. Yes, Leon, I would be shocked if he wasn't in violation of 2 or 3 or 4. But he went in and then, to make himself look like he wasn't there just to make money off the whole deal, gave it away to charity. But, his fraudulently saying, writing out these cards with the lot numbers that he destroyed and injected the kid with saline. I don't even know why he gave the injection. I guess the kid wants to know. Yeah, doc poked me with a needle. It must have been something. I don't know. But
I think in some cases he actually deceived the parents. Quite frankly, if you read the story, he actually deceived the parents. But go ahead.
He deceived the parents.
The parents believed that the child was being vaccinated in some cases.
I don't know. That's not the impression I got from the story. Maybe I have to go dig farther into it, but at least all the visual video story I had was all of parents who essentially were looking for a way around it with their kids. Now, maybe the kids didn't know what they were getting, but I thought the parents literally.
Maybe there was some deception involved, so it's okay. Maybe I am.
I think it was deceiving the government. Is that the problem?
Well, he was just. It sounds like he was deceiving the kids and the government, which is about basically the same thing. So okay, he probably broke a law in there. Under the circumstances, I don't care. I mean, number one. So here's the two things. Okay, if we're libertarians, we believe that we can make decisions about our own bodies. Okay, whatever the government says and whatever laws are, they like to stand behind so that they can come in there and arrest you and throw you in a cage. Notwithstanding, he did, number one, what the parents wanted. The parents did what they wanted, and everybody went, and the kids got to go to school. They didn't have to miss out on school because of these arbitrary laws that the government erected in that era during that time. So I think it's a win-win for all, and I hope the guy, gets all these charges dropped. If anybody deserves it, I think he does. And he broke the whole rule of law. Leon holds the rule of law in a little bit higher place than I hold it. Laws have to be just, and unjust laws are not laws anymore, and that's throughout the whole. The whole American experience is that we obey laws that we feel are just. Now, if a guy kills somebody or robs somebody, he goes, well, I don't think it's just law. Well, okay, well, the majority. Okay, and let's look at it. Let's not be ridiculous. It's the majority of people, and so I think I'm in the majority of people that I feel think this guy's doing okay by fraudulently tricking the government at their own game. And I'm sorry he got caught. I wonder who finked on him, but anyway, there we are.
Tim, I think you slightly missed my point.
Okay.
I am simply saying there's always the dilemma that we face as citizens or as residents of any nation that we live in. There will always be an issue of your moral conscience versus the rule of law, and where you fall on that, in terms of what choices you make because of that dilemma, will determine what action you take. This guy was facing a choice: the rule of law versus his moral conscience, and he chose his moral conscience, which is fine. I support that, but we still have the rule of law that we cannot ignore, and we should not ignore. But that is the point I was trying to make. And if you go back to the example you use the example of this fugitive slave run across my property. Well, I'm still faced with my moral conscience. Is the moral conscience versus the rule of law? And I think in that case, I'm sure my moral conscience would have won. But I would still be breaking the law. We are always faced with that dilemma. We always do. And some of us, even when we're faced with a dilemma, we choose to obey the law. But in some cases, you just can't.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, because then if you get caught, and you're hauled off to jail, at least, well, okay, I took the chance.
Right, exactly. You're willing, and this is just the point. When your moral conscience is speaking to you louder than the rule of law, you're willing to bear the consequences if you decide to go with your moral conscience.
Right. Yeah. So that at least, that's a more honest way of looking at it with yourself. You're being honest with yourself.
Well, and there's always the route of jury nullification potentially later on too.
So,
so there's always that. But I did want to make two little points about this story, and one is that technically there kind of was a victim. I mean, they're statist victims, but those people who thought that the cards meant something, those people, I guess, were kind of violated, I suppose. But then again, they're the ones who were for the government school and everything else.
Are you talking about the school officials that looked at the
cards?
I
mean, there's some of those parents would have wanted them to have the cards too, right? Like the parents of kids who thought that this was all, a great plan, right? That the government's direction was a good direction. Those parents might have said, hey, why is that kid not vaccinated, type of thing, right? And then they thought they were vaccinated because now they have this card from the government that says they're vaccinated.
Yeah.
Just like the card that says they're educated after they've gone to the government school. It doesn't mean much.
Yeah. Well, okay, but they were worried at the time that people that were not vaccinated were more easily capable of transmitting disease. Yes. And what we found out, beyond a shadow of a doubt now, is that the vaccine did not make any difference there with people transmitting the disease. So that was the lie. When you talk about the government's lie, the lie was that you get a vaccine, you won't be able to transfer the disease. Everybody's hunky dory. And so now if you want to go anywhere amongst other people, you better have that vaccine. So, and then we find out later, well, it doesn't really matter. So I don't really care. I don't care that some people were fooled by that.
Yeah, no, I don't particularly. I'm not shedding any tears.
No, we're not. None of us are. It's just the philosophical issues that this case raised for us. But you know what is even worse about this case, and this is where we get into where the moral conscience probably spoke louder to that doctor than the actual rule of law. The children who are involved in this thing, kids are the least vulnerable to the COVID virus, the least vulnerable. They don't get sick, they don't transmit. I mean, in terms of the schools, I think there's only one case where a kid transmitted to a teacher, as far as maybe one or two or some kind of stuff like that. They are the least vulnerable. So I can see why that doctor's moral conscience spoke to him much louder than the potential rule of law or the potential laws that he would have been breaking. But this to me would leave me in the situation where I totally support the doctor choosing his moral conscience in this case, even though there's a potential consequences. I don't know how many laws he broke. According to the Justice Department, he broke quite a few. As long as he was willing, ready, and able to bear the consequences, then there's no issue here. He's willing to bear the consequences. His moral conscience spoke to him, and he did what he thought was right, as he said in the video.
Here's one other interesting aspect too that I want to bring up. But you notice if he did this, that nobody came back and sued him afterwards, which means that everybody he served was
in on the game.
Yeah, yes. Nobody was saying, hey, the government isn't pointing to this and says, hey, look at the trail of death this guy left, right? I mean, so because you would think that if he was wrong in some of this, that somebody would have turned around and sued him afterwards.
Right.
And yeah.
And you're right in this story, and this would support a point you made earlier on, Jason. In your story, there's not a single parent complaining, oh God, I thought my kid was vaccinated, which would support your earlier point.
Yeah. Well, one other thing I think is worth saying before we leave the public access group real quick is just that note also, this was a local public effort that brought the attention to help get him out. So, which screams to the point of what we're trying to say, get active in your community, do something, to advance the ball for liberty, because that's what has to happen. And this was a group called We the People that did this. So, definitely you can make a difference in your community for, somebody who may need you to help with their liberty. But if you're watching us on public access, you're going to have to catch the rest of the show online. So go check it out there. And now we're back to the show. So one other point I wanted to bring up
about those moonshiners.
What's that?
The Kennedys got very rich disobeying the law, disobeying the Constitution.
That's right.
Yeah, apparently Ted Kennedy didn't think drunk driving was a crime either.
Yeah, of course.
You don't try to separate a Catholic from his booze, let me tell you. As a former Catholic.
Oh, okay.
Born and raised.
I was raised Catholic myself, Tim. So.
There is one other aspect that I did want to bring up in the story before we jump on, and it's the fact that here was a doctor who was doing what he thought was in the good conscience of his patients. And, it was at their request, and he was being persecuted by the government. But if you remember, the top doctor was literally lying to us all the way, and he got a full pardon.
Yes,
I just want to remind people with a real quick video of who Fauci was, because just so we don't forget, I mean, this was a doctor who literally got a pardon from Biden, and he lied to us on so many different aspects of what happened during COVID. But let's just take a quick snapshot back at the mask, because that was the most absurd, where he just literally lied to us and kept changing his story, and the media just went along with it.
People should not be walking around with masks.
You're sure of it, because people are listening really closely to this.
Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. Wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. There are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching.
One mask is better than zero masks. Two masks is better than one mask, but you don't have to have double masks. Is that right? I mean,
it is.
And now we're hearing we should wear two. Where do you stand on that? If I go to the grocery store, do I wear two? Do I wear three? Is it safer to wear 8?
One of the ways you could do it, if you would like to, is put a cloth mask over, which actually here And here, where you could get leakage in, is much better contained. So if you have a physical covering with one layer, you put another layer on, it just makes common sense.
We went all the way from I don't know, something that he called common sense in the end. I don't know. I mean, what I heard all the time I've ever been in school, when you're in a laboratory situation or anything like that, is there standard operating procedures with putting on protective gear if you want it to work. And here he is throwing on a whole bunch of masks and everything else. I don't know. It just seems kind of crazy. But anyway, that's the type of guy who got a pass while this other doctor is literally working with the conscience of his patients. And,
Well, I'm not sure yet. I would not say yet that he got a pass, because we are having a full-blown investigation into some of those pardons that Biden issued, and we're trying to figure out how deep was his cognitive decline at the time of those pardons, and if we could prove, I hope they do, that he was in deep cognitive decline, well, then those pardons might be invalid, and then we could prosecute his ass.
And that is a topic for another day. That story's breaking right around now anyway, so maybe next week we'll get to that story. But let's jump into some of the madness that's going on in Los Angeles. So, we've seen all kinds of crazy things happen with LA where, they can't seem to keep any insurance around. They seem to be going up in flames. There's riots. It just seems like there's always something going on in LA.
There are no riots, Jason. There are no riots in LA. Okay, it's just mostly peaceful protests. Okay,
protesting.
Don't lie to people. Don't lie to people.
Well, the latest mayhem is that amidst all the chaos, they thought it was in their good judgment to commit to doing the Olympics there. Which sounds like they're going to have to get over some real hurdles to make it there. But one of the hurdles is self-imposed. So let's see, there's a story where they had recently decided to raise the minimum wage for hotel workers and airline workers up to $30 an hour. This almost seems like we're in satire land with this, because, that was always one of the arguments that we always used to hear from people who were free market economists. When somebody bring up minimum wage and they'd say, we need a minimum wage of $7. Said, well, why not make it 30?
Exactly.
LA City Council is taking it to heart. They made it 30. And now they're starting to realize that's creating some serious hurdles, because they had made agreements with a bunch of hotel chains to have certain rates for the Olympics and to have expansions to accommodate some of this stuff. And now suddenly, after making that deal, they turn around and they raise the minimum wage and say, hey, wait, we can't do this on the same rate that you guys were saying. So, we're sorry, we're just not going to make that hurdle with you for the Olympics. And so there's let me play the news footage on that so you can get a little bit of a better sense of the story.
Several hotels now threatening to leave an agreement to offer discounted rooms for the 2028 Summer Olympic Games in Los Angeles. Today, the LA City Council will vote for a second and final time on the $30 per hour minimum wage hike for tourism workers. The Hotel Association of Los Angeles says at least 8 hotels will back out of a room block agreement for the Olympics if the measure passes today. That agreement includes discounted rates at hotels across the city for officials, sponsors, and even the media. Now, the hotels say those rates can no longer be sustained under the new wage ordinance.
So imagine that. The LA City Council enters into an agreement with the hotel industry to provide discounted rooms for the Olympics, and no sooner said than done, they turn around and they raise all the costs on the hotel industry of being able to deliver on those promises. So let's see what the LA City Council says, why they say they're doing this.
City leaders like Councilmember Hugo Soto Martinez say the new wage and healthcare benefit is needed.
When we look around the city of Los Angeles, rents are skyrocketing. People do not have health insurance to take their kids for even the most simple illnesses. As a city, we have to look at that and say we have to do something. I certainly don't have that big of a concern about hotels closing, because we have a hardship exemption in the law. So if we do have employers that say, they can't sustain this, they can come to the city, we can go through the process, and they can be exempt completely from the law.
So Democrats, as always, looking to solve problems through socialist edicts to get other people to pay for someone else's problems. they never look at the issue that a lot of times it's all of the laws and regulations that they pass that actually drive up the cost of living for everybody. So let's see what's actually going to wind up happening with one particular hotel owner.
Mark Davis with Sun Hill Properties believes that he really is worried about what this may mean for the future of hotels in Los Angeles.
I've been directed by the shareholders to look for other locations for growth. Could have been in LA, but it's not going to be in LA.
So there you have it. LA managing to kill anything good in their jurisdiction. And that really reminds me again of the quote and sort of why I chose it. It's that unintended consequences thing again. So what do you guys think about that story?
You see, this is a very clear example of the anti-Midas touch. The government has a universal anti-Midas touch. Anytime they touch anything, it turns to shit instead of gold. And they always make these vacuum policies. They'll make these policies, they'll have these edicts, they'll make these laws, these bylaws and regulations, and they always think it will have no effect in the marketplace. Nobody will change their decisions because they just pass a law. So here's a hotel operator. He's okay, probably making his little net profit, maybe a little 5-10%. And he's going along his business. Thinking about expanding his business. And boom, here comes Uncle Sam, or in this case, the LA City Council. And they say, well, you see that $15, that $16 you're paying right now an hour? It ain't good enough. We want to inch it up until it gets at $30 an hour. And you know what the LA Council, the City Council expect? The LA City Council expect that hotel will just say, well, okay, we're rich. We're rich. We will just eat that. That'll be no problem. Don't worry about it. We'll just eat it. This is the sort of idiotic thinking that exists within government. And this is where the anti-Midas touch comes from. Whenever the government touches something, it turns to shit. And now the LA we may suffer because many of these hotels may either leave or break out, move away from the deal they make with the city, and all these sort of things going to happen. Because in their head, in their little pea brain head, all they think about is that, this will have no effect upon anyone. It will be so nice and wonderful. We're going to have utopia right here in Los Angeles, believe it or not. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Okay. That's all good. No disagreement with any of that. In my simple pea brain, I like to go to demand curve simplicity, and demand curve simplicity in this situation just says, like it always does, that if you artificially increase the price of something, you're going to have less demand for it. Demand will go down as the price goes up. All other things like supply being the same. In this case, the demand for hotel maids and service workers is going to go down when the LA City Council makes the price of that labor artificially high. And it's going to go down because hotels that depend on that labor are going to be forced to go elsewhere outside of it, thus lowering the demand for that labor, right? Hotel moves, doesn't get built in LA, or they close down and sell the property and move somewhere else, some other city, Texas, or any city, actually, come to San Diego, as far as that goes, Sacramento, whatever, and San Francisco. And so they will, and so the demand for that labor goes down. And it's just simple demand economics.
Yeah. The only thing is, Tim, I don't think they're going to choose San Francisco or Sacramento just because the politics are so similar that $30 minimum wage is probably right around the corner there too.
Here in California, we are so gone mad. We have so gone mad in some of our policies that we that are issued and the edicts and regulations. We even have, well, I think it's probably no longer in existence. We even have a minimum value on theft, on shoplifting. And they think this is a nice, wonderful thing. If you just walk in a store and you steal less than $950, you shoplift less than $950, don't worry, they can't touch you. And we think that's a wonderful thing. These politicians, these idiots, these insane people think that is a wonderful thing. It's like I tell you, it's the anti-Midas touch. Now, when you turn around now and you see people do exactly, they create these perverse incentives. People just walk in the store, they're walking out with people's property and all that kind of stuff. Nobody could do anything to them. What happened? Businesses, especially in San Francisco, start to walk away, and all of the San Francisco City Council sitting around wondering, why are they doing this? Why are they abandoning these neighborhoods? All these people and all, they can't get all the goods and services they need. Well, all of a sudden, oh my God, how did this happen? Because they always think, their little pea brain always think vacuum policy. We make a law, we pass a law, we hand down an edict, and it will affect no one. Everything is going to end up in this great paradise or in this great utopia. It will affect no one.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem is reality doesn't always go along with the central planner's plans. In fact, it usually doesn't go along with the central planner's plans. Yeah. Now,
And there's a very interesting story talking about. I'm sorry, just about central planning. Mikhail Gorbachev. I think I said this story on the show before. Mikhail Gorbachev was once meeting with Margaret Thatcher, and Mikhail Gorbachev tells Margaret Thatcher, well, at the time they were importing a lot of wheat, I believe, and that kind of stuff. The Soviet Union was importing a lot of wheat. Tells Margaret Thatcher that the Soviet Union produces more than enough food to feed its people. But you know what happens? A third of it rots before it gets to market. Why do you think that has happened? Because of the central planners. I mean, that was not part of his conversation, but the 1/3 was part of his conversation. The 1/3 rotten before it gets to market was what he told Margaret Thatcher. And Gorbachev could not figure out why that was the case. And any economist who could tie half of his brain behind his back, any Western economist that is, could tie half of his brain behind his back and tell him the answer. Your central planners need to be buried somewhere for good.
But by the way, there's a really good story that goes along with the one you're talking about in Russia. But if you check out NPR's Planet Money, of all places, believe it or not, NPR used to have some decent stuff on a long time ago. But they had a program on that talked about the problem with China and the central planning that they had on the farms back in the 60s, I think, and how everybody was starving to death. And it was only because some brave farmers decided to buck the system and not just follow all the rules that eventually they got caught, but they realized, wait a second, those guys are actually making enough food and nobody else is. And so then they decided to lighten up. I think they had just changed prime ministers or premiers or whatever it is that's in control in China, presidents. Yes. And they wound up then relaxing that a little bit and experimenting with some of this stuff. And they, lo and behold, that was the start of their move toward markets in China. So, but it's a great story worth checking out on NPR. Planet Money.
Planet Money. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I tell you that the madness in LA doesn't just end in crazy edicts for minimum wage. Apparently the local leaders have all kinds of strange ideas around the laws, and right now they are having kind of an immigration issue with ICE. So the federal government is cracking down on immigration, and of course California has made itself into a sanctuary state, so there is a conflict that is going on here. And a lot of the local leaders who generally praise and love their faith in government Now suddenly, when it's a leader they don't like in the White House, they're all about resisting government. And so what we see is some fairly, it's almost like local leaders gone wild in LA. So let's see, let me bring up the story here. So in this particular one, a local a vice mayor of Cudahy was caught. Essentially, she put out a video wondering why the gangs aren't coming out to resist, why the violent street gangs aren't coming out to resist ICE. And so, and then of course, LA was literally also looking. LA City Council was also asking about, well, can the police give us a heads up whenever ICE is coming through? So, anyways, we're going to see a little bit of video on those two things because it's it's kind of outrageous. So let me pull up the video here.
Cudahy Vice Mayor Cynthia Gonzalez facing intense backlash over a video of her that appears to have been shared from one of her social media accounts. While not naming ICE in the clip, Gonzalez calls on rival local gangs and their leadership to reclaim Cudahy's streets.
They tag everything up, claiming hood, and now that your hood's being invaded by the biggest gang there is, there ain't a peep out of you. It's everyone else who's not about the gang life that's out there protesting and speaking up.
We reached out to Gonzalez, but she would not respond to texts, calls, or emails. The city of Cudahy released a statement after the video went viral, saying the city is aware of the recent comments that were made on social media by Gonzalez and that they do not represent the official position of the city. The Department of Homeland Security also responded to the clip, saying in a post on X, the comments made by the Vice Mayor of Cudahy, California, Cynthia Gonzalez, are despicable. She calls for criminal gangs, including the vicious 18th Street Gang, to commit violence against our brave ICE law enforcement. This kind of garbage has led to a more than 500% increase in assaults against our ICE law enforcement officers.
Wow. So the vice mayor of Cudahy is literally calling on violent street gangs to come out and resist ICE. Let's find out what's going on with the LA City Council, because Cudahy is actually within broader Los Angeles.
Can we use technology like AI technology to create a situation where your department can identify, hey, there's agents, non-city of LA, in a neighboring town, everyone go on alert in a way where you can support our business community and our immigrant community to know that it's time. That's something related to the lack of due process, the lack of warrants is about to hit our town. I'm asking a creativity question here. What can your department do to do more to warn us, to warn the business community that outside of our LA borders, coming in from Inglewood, coming in from Antelope Valley, I don't know, you can warn us so that we can warn our folks in the spirit of your loyalty to the city of Los Angeles?
So you're asking me to warn you about an enforcement action being taken by another agency before it happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't do that.
Why not?
That would be obstruction of justice. You may want to talk to the city attorney about that.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, they're en route. We know they're coming. We know they're coming to bring disruption. There's no way that we can know.
I don't know how to even respond to that. But no, we're not allowed to do that. That would be completely inappropriate and illegal.
So there you have it. Now, we talked before about laws that maybe, we didn't, maybe resisting certain laws, but that was in the context of citizens. These are literally government officials who don't like what other government officials are doing, and they're trying to get them to obstruct justice. Anyways, what do you guys think of this? It seems to be kind of a crazy story.
I think this is insanity going amok. Okay. This is really insanity going amok. This woman, I think she sits on the city council, if I'm not mistaken, but she is telling a police officer, and he looks like he's some high-ranking police officer, maybe he's the chief of police or whatever he is, some high-ranking official, to break the law, literally telling him he needs to break the law. This is insanity going amok. And what I cannot understand, most of all, in all of this discussion about immigration and these migrants and everything, I cannot understand why we think there's some moral purpose in carving out these special exceptions for people who have actually broken the law. Whether you like it or not, crossing the border illegally is a felony. Why we have to carve out these exceptions. When I'm speeding down the road and the policeman stop me to give me a ticket, and that have happened a few times since I've lived here in the United States, what am I supposed to tell the police officer? Oh, give me a break now. You know, I'm a poor immigrant. You know, you notice my skin color too? I'm an immigrant. You need to give me a break. Is that what I'm supposed to say? Why we have to have a special carve-out for immigrants, illegal immigrants? Why? I cannot understand this.
I don't understand it either. Yeah, exceptions like that. I mean, that's asking a lot. I mean, you know, it's just asking a lot. I don't quite get it. You know, if it was justified some way, that I just don't see the justification. You know, it's just not going to happen. I mean, imagine if it did. Let's just say the guy said, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure, I know it's illegal, but I'm going to." You know, as soon as ICE tells me their next place, I'm going to send it on to you personally, and you can do what you want with it. I mean, as soon as they did that, ICE would stop sending information to the LAPD. Okay, I mean, the next day or the next hour, that would be the end of it. You know, they would just say, well, you know, forget that. But you know, I mean, just the whole thing is convoluted. I mean, I guess I don't know if I'm taking the side of the government on this. I mean, but maybe I am. But you know, it's just ludicrous to ask that.
You know what's weird is that these are the people who typically want big government. These are the people who wanted all the COVID restrictions. These are the people who essentially wanted, you know, generally want government to crack down on all areas of our lives. And then when it's something they don't like, suddenly, you know, insurrection time, boys. Let's get together. Figure out how to obstruct justice.
Yeah. Time for some mass civil disobedience of the law. Yes.
Yeah. Well, in case you somehow think that this is just like a one-off, this woman, Imelda Padilla, that was the woman who was literally asking the police chief to obstruct justice. It's not just related to this one issue. And there was another story with her, and I thought it'd be just fun to bring up really quick because it's pretty short, but it shows essentially where her mind is at in general on politics. So let me bring up this quick video real quick.
LA City Council member Imelda Padilla denies giving the finger to a man during a council meeting, but that man tells a different story. So does his young daughter, who recorded it. Eyewitness News reporter Josh Haskell talked to them and has the video.
Why is she doing this? You know, like why? She owes him an apology.
The public comment portion of Los Angeles City Council meetings are often unpredictable, with some going off topic, using the microphone to offend. But at a committee meeting last Friday, it was actually City Council member Imelda Padilla who offended and shocked community organizer Raul Claros and his 8-year-old daughter while he was giving public comment.
How petty, how unprofessional, and in this circumstance with my child being there, how unfortunate and disgusting.
Video shot by Valentina Zamora Claros, who attended the meeting with her dad, appears to show Padilla flip off Claros while he spoke, opposing a motion that he says has divided the Guatemalan and El Salvador communities.
So there you go. I don't know what to say about LA's governance.
We said it before. These are a bunch of insane idiots. Okay, that is what we said before. It's still true. This is just further proof. That's all.
I didn't even know about this story. I was just looking for video on the other story. And I happened to run into this one.
You saw it, huh? Well, it explains some things.
Yeah,
it sure does.
About the question. That's the question she asked.
Yes.
Well, imagine this is when she's representing government, she thinks it's okay to give the finger to people.
Yes.
Concerns about stuff, but yeah.
And she think it's okay to encourage police officers to break the law. Yes, tell me about that one.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much all we have on topics for you guys today. I don't know. Do you guys have any final thoughts before we break out?
I'm thoughtless.
It sounds like you're a victim of government education.
I think so. I really think so. Yes. Yeah. But I think this episode of the Knuckleheads of Liberty raised quite a few issues in my mind. And I hope one day we can get back to one major issue that came out of this, is that there are times in our lives when we are faced with this issue, this dilemma of the moral conscience speaking to us versus the rule of law. And there are so many times in our history where this have troubled some of our own citizens, our fellow citizens. And we see one with this doctor in particular that we just spoke about. I hope one day we can do an episode about the moral conscience versus the rule of law. How do we make choices when we are faced with that dilemma?
Yeah. Oh, definitely a topic to dive into later. Certainly, we're always going to be faced with those types of things. But
yes.
Anyways, as far as if you've been watching this show, just think about what you could do in your own community to move the ball for liberty. We saw a story today about this group, We the People, that was out there, and they made a difference for a doctor who was trying to stand up for people during COVID. So, you can make a difference. So, do what you can in your community. And until the next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Oh, yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.